Well, we are well and truly into the A-League off-season. It is exactly 1 week to the day since Central Coast Mariners lifted the 2022-23 A-League Men's Championship. It's transfer season. We all know it's a crazy time, especially just after the season ends. The transfer window is set to open in the A-League Men's competition. So we're going to dive into the transfers that we've seen so far, and we're going to do a weekly series. Every weekend, we're going to be recapping the week's transfers. And we are going off this lovely page that the Keep Up website has set up for us. Explaining all of the ins and outs. And this, of course, will be updated over the off season. And we're going to just go through club by club, give you guys my thoughts and reactions to some of the names who have come into some clubs and departed some clubs, because there's been some big moves already. Adelaide United, probably the club that we have the least amount of movement, really, for Adelaide United. Just one day, who, of course, suffered that terrible injury around the middle of the campaign. He has departed the club. Interesting to see that there aren't really any other changes. I mean, whether we'll see a couple of players depart, we could still see that happen. There's some good young players at Adelaide who could earn a move overseas. And it'll be interesting to see what areas they strengthen, maybe another quality central defender. So what's something that Adelaide need? Obviously, with one day leaving, you'd expect them to sign another midfielder potentially. For Brisbane Roar, some movement here. Obviously, need to rebuild. Ross Aloisi is coming in to coach the club. We've got Joe Knowles, Robbie Cruz, Brindle South, Canardi, Courtney Perkins, and Holmes all leaving the club. Jordan Holmes was the most recent one to be announced, and it came as a bit of a surprise to me. There was a bit of sort of some rumors that Jordan Holmes was going to be departing the club, wasn't offered a new contract. And it's a big loss because I think he's one of the more underrated keepers in the league, Jordan Holmes. They've got Macklin Freak there, who could probably step in as the number one. They have chopped and changed those starting keepers from time to time, Brisbane Roar. But look, potentially they're just going in a different direction when it comes to the goalkeeping position. There aren't too many available goalkeepers out there across the A-League. We've already seen a couple of goalkeeper movements, which we'll be seeing later on in the video. And we do have some good re-signings, though, two good young players in Jez Lofthouse and Louis Zabala. I thought Lofthouse was really impressive. Nick Green started him in those last handful of games, and really impressed on that left wing for Brisbane Roar. For the champions, Central Coast Mariners, not too much movement just yet, but we have, of course, had the big transfer out. And look, it's a wonderful move. Nectar Triantis. Yes, it is a huge loss for the Mariners. We have to admit that, of course. He has been so good this year for the Central Coast, but absolutely deserves this massive move because he's going to be a future Socceroo. It's certain he's going to be a future Socceroo. This is someone who we could potentially see starting in the 2026 World Cup for the Socceroos. He is so good on the ball. His passing ability is fantastic. And just the bravery that he shows for someone so young, it was really incredible to watch this season. Jack Wachowski from Wanderers has come in potentially as a future first-choice keeper, potentially if Danny Vukovic decides to retire in the coming years as well. So Mariners picking up the Wanderers keeper there. For the Bulls, always interesting watching the Bulls in the offseason. They like to make a lot of moves and a lot of big high-profile moves. And signing Clayton Lewis from Wellington Phoenix is a high-profile move, in my opinion. I think it's a great signing. MacArthur have often lacked like a solid defensive midfielder. They brought in Kieran Backus last year. He did a decent job, but didn't really, set the world on fire. And for Clayton Lewis, he's someone that could just sit in that midfield, allow the likes of Ulysses Davia and, Daniel Alzani ahead of him to play and, a bit of freedom and just control things at the base of midfield. Look at those outs, though. Some big names in there. Craig Noon, Romero, Arabuli's gone, Susnia, Suma the goalkeeper, De Silva, Toure, and Najar. So some quality players there. We're hearing that potentially De Silva and Toure are set for overseas moves. So interested to see where they are going to end up. Craig Noon, I think, still has a lot to offer in the A-League. Had a bit of a stop-start season this time around. Re-signing Jake McGinn was a big one for the Bulls. He's a player that's been there since season one. And I think that's important for MacArthur. Just a lockdown of some solid players who are going to really establish an identity there at the club. So McGinn, the defender, locking in his next couple of years at the Bulls. For Melbourne City. So this is interesting. So we have to talk about Melbourne City. Obviously, they're coming off just a week ago now, losing the grand final 6-1, which was just unacceptable. It's simply unacceptable. It just can't happen for a club of this size and this quality. No ins yet, but they have lost Geordie Boss, Jamison, Barisha. His loan has ended. Borges Rodriguez has left the club. Sutton, Kieran Stokes, Aidan O'Neill, Tom Glover. Obviously, we're looking at the big names in Glover, in O'Neill, Geordie Boss. We sort of have known for a while that he was going to be departing. Jamison retiring as well. Barisha. there's some key areas of the field where City really are going to have to recruit. I mean, they don't have a goalkeeper now when you're losing Sutton and Glover. Look, they've got some good young keepers coming through the academy, of course, but Aidan O'Neill's a big loss. Berisha was crucial to City this season, and they're going to need to find a solid left back. Maybe they can slot Scott Galloway in there. He can play on the left side of defense as well. There's a lot of key areas there that City need to recruit in. And if they don't, we could see the end of this City reign. It's a big call, but the way they lost that grand final and with the key players they're losing, there's a chance we could see City. I don't think there's any chance they slip out of the top six. They're just too good for that. But I don't think they'll be as dominant next year. We'll have to keep an eye on their ins and outs throughout the offseason. For Victory, of course, a big one for them. Obviously, they need to recruit. It's sort of a different situation in Melbourne City. They've already lost Acton, Brooks. Cadete has left the club. Tommy Urich had a disappointing season. He's left. Romero's loan has ended, as has Kamal's. And of course, as we know, Nadi didn't quite work out this season. He has departed the club, unfortunately. So, again, a couple key players there. Overall, nothing too disrupting. I was surprised to see Leighton Brooks depart. I thought he's a quality young player with a bright future, but it's going to be all about those ins for Melbourne Victory and Tony Popovich this season. Newcastle Jets, some interesting moves here. They've got they're not lacking in left-sided players with both Jacob Douse and Lucas Moragas. Moragas, of course, was on loan at Wellington last year, and they have signed Ryan Scott from Western United because they have lost keeper Jack Duncan to Wellington Phoenix. Some more big outs there, though. Angus Thurgate to Western. Mikkel Dadsey has left the club. That's a big out. Saito Altai, another player who has joined Wellington. Josh Sotirio and Matt Yerman, who was announced just yesterday. He was captaining the club the back end of last season, has departed Newcastle as well. So another rebuild. And I feel like we've seen this the last few years now where Pappas is sort of just looking to find the right formula. I mean, losing Beckham Mikkel Dadsey is a big one, man. I know he wasn't as good last season, but you think a couple of years ago, his partnership with Pena was so good. He did grab a handful of goals last year, but didn't quite have the same impact. It's going to be a completely new sort of attacking setup now for Newcastle Jets and Thurgate. I mean, that's a massive loss as well. There's some recruitment that needs to be done there at Newcastle Jets. Big test for Arthur Pappas. He has to get this right, or this could potentially be his last year in charge of the Jets. For Perth Glory, just a few moves. Ollie Sale, of course, as we've known for a while, has joined the club. Liam Reddy out, Jacob Douse out, Brad Jones has retired, and Keegan Jelicic, who has earned a fantastic move over to Europe and a re-signing of Adam Zimmerino. And of course, we'll wait to see who's going to be coaching Perth Glory this year, as we reported in a video a couple weeks ago now. No Ruben Zakovic for next season. The head coach has left the club. Sydney FC, some outs here. We got Thomas Heward-Bell, Joel King, and Alex Wilkinson, who are all departing the club. Of course, Wilkinson retiring. So going to be interesting to see what they do in that centre-back position. Is it Aaron Gerd, the youngster who slots right in? We'll keep an eye on that one. But some work needs to be done for Sydney FC. For Wellington Phoenix, of course, they have signed Altai and Duncan. So whether Duncan's going to be the first choice keeper, I mean, it's an interesting one. He was sort of in and out at Newcastle Jets. A lot of people, everyone's a big fan of Alex Paulson. We remember what he did in the Australia Cup a couple of years ago in that penalty shootout against Melbourne City. But the outs here for Wellington Phoenix, some big names here. Ollie Sale, Clayton Lewis, Steven Ugarkovic, Josh Laws, Nico Boxall, Callan Elliott had a great season last year. Of course, no Moragas. And Jan Sass. So most of those names are first-team players. Italiano, who's stepping in his first season as the head coach, has a big task on his hands here to recruit some big names to Wellington Phoenix, because there's some big player routes there for Wellington. Only a couple of teams left. Western Sydney Wanderers, plenty of outs, and again a curious situation here because some key first-team players leaving the club in Morgan Schneidlin and Mal Fatana, who was so good last season. And Bikoto's gone. Of course, we know Wachowski's gone to Mariners. Layuni, his loan has ended, and there was a lot of talk about him sticking around at Wanderers, potentially going to Melbourne City. Doesn't look like it's going to happen. I think he's getting some interest from Europe at the moment. Dama Traore, that's a big loss. He's been very consistent at left back. And some good young players in Lapane and Wilmering leaving, and Terry Antonis, who I think we've been hearing across the socials that he's linked with Melbourne City, which would be quite interesting. So, big losses there for Wanderers. But Rudin did a very good job of, he spent a lot of time with his recruitment last year, found a lot of these really talented players, brought them in. They had a fantastic season this year. Wanderers didn't quite end the way they wanted it to. But some recruitment needed there as well, especially in some of those crucial midfield positions. Tom Beadling has re-signed, and he was decent last year. Very versatile. We saw him play across midfield, across the back line as well, Tom Beadling. So he has re-signed for a couple of years. And then for Western United, the team who won the championship over a year ago now, Angus Thurgate has signed for the club. Good midfield signing. But look at those outs. Lacroix, Young, Kilkenny, Topper Stanley. All these champions, man, all from their championship winning team. Diamante, of course, has retired. No Tonga Doumbia, Troisi, Ryan Scott, Bayou Collins, Dew, and Parias have all departed the club. Re-signing of Sebastian Pasquale there, another midfielder. So, really a bit of a reshuffle there for John Aloisi, which I don't think is surprising considering how poor they were last season. Not necessarily poor, but they underperformed after winning the championship the year before. To not finish in finals was not how Western wanted that campaign to go. So, Thurgate is a crucial signing, especially losing some key midfielders in Doumbia and Kilkenny, who are those main defensive midfielders for Western last year. Going to be interesting to see what happens with the likes of Prijovic, whether he sticks around as well. But they need to sign some defenders now with Topper Stanley retiring and Leo Lacroix departing. Some work to be done for Western United. So that is the current state of things across the A-League transfers. Let me know your guys' thoughts. Which team needs to recruit the most? It's going to be really fascinating to see how things play out. And stay subscribed because, of course, we're going to be doing these update videos every week, updating you guys and giving you guys my thoughts on all of the latest A-League transfer news. Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. Hit like if you want to show your support. My name's Lockie. This is Coast Watch Football, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers.